Okay, so now we are in the middle section of the poem. Part one of the poem lists off which birds are allowed to come to the funeral and why, and which birds are not allowed to come to the funeral and what jobs the birds are going to have. So now we're in the middle section of the poem. The middle section of the poem is really the most difficult. Um, it, it, it's very confusing when you read it. Hard to understand what the hell they're talking about. In fact, we can look at a little of it really quick just to re-experience how confusing it is. Here the anthem doth commence, love and constancy is dead. The phoenix and the turtle fled in mutual flame from hence. So that's actually pretty easy to understand, right? Here they're going to start saying something about these two dead birds, the phoenix and the turtle. Here the anthem, what we're going to say or sing, starts here. Love and constancy is dead. So constancy is like when you're true to somebody, when you're faithful. Faith is constancy. So they say love and constancy is dead. Phoenix and the turtle fled in mutual flame from hence. So the phoenix and the turtle basically burned up together because that's what the phoenix does, it burns. It says love and constancy is dead. The idea is that because they were so in love, it's like they were so in love and they were so faithful to each other that it's like they were like the gods of love and the gods of faithfulness. So if they're dead, love and constancy is dead everywhere. Like if that was true love, and true love is dead, it's dead everywhere for everyone because they were like symbolic of this larger thing. So that's the idea. When the phoenix and the turtle die, it's like love is dead everywhere. So that's pretty easy. The next thing, though, gets really difficult. It's like a complicated kind of philosophy. So they loved, as love in twain had the essence but in one. Two distincts, division none, number there in love was slain. Hearts remote, yet not asunder, distance and no space was seen twixt this turtle and his queen. But in them it were a wonder. It's very, very confusing. But it's confusing, but it is essentially just saying the same thing over and over and over again. So once you grasp the basic meaning, and it does take a second to grasp the meaning, but once you grasp the basic meaning, the whole middle section of the poem becomes a hell of a lot easier to understand. It is trying to say something very difficult. And so it says it over and over in different ways. But once you grasp the essential idea that it's trying to describe, it's a hard thing to describe, then the rest of the poem makes more sense. So I'm just going to tell you what that is, nice and easy. The idea, I'm sure you guys have heard the expression soulmates before, for when people are very deeply in love, but you probably didn't think much about what soulmates means. Plato, in sort of in ancient Greek mythology, had this idea that human beings used to be shaped sort of like eggs, and that in the beginning of time they were cut apart, they were cut in half, and so people spend their lives searching for their other half. We still use that expression to describe someone you fall in love with as your other half. It's an old-fashioned expression, but it's your other half. But Plato had this idea, and Shakespeare's thinking of the same idea here, which is that soulmates, your souls, are supposed to be mated together. They're joined. Complicatedly, the way Plato thinks about soulmates, same way Shakespeare's thinking about it in this poem, is it's not just that like your soul and their soul are a good match. It's that your soul and their soul were originally one soul, and it got cut in half. And finding the person you love is like finding the other half of yourself. Um, so that people who are very deeply in love, the idea of it is they are essentially sharing one soul. Now, what makes this confusing in the poem, what Shakespeare is interested in exploring, is how complicated that is, because it's two different creatures, but they only have one soul because they're sharing a soul because they're soulmates. And even though they are two creatures, the phoenix and the turtle dove, they're also kind of one creature because love unifies them or puts them together or mates them or pairs them, or they used to only be half a creature until they found their soulmate, and now they're a whole person, but it's one. We have the same kind of paradox in the if you go to weddings, you'll often in the Bible it says man and woman, man and wife is one flesh. That's it's exact same concept, which is that you're essentially linked or joined. That to be in love is to be like, you're not two people anymore. You're now like one combo person, because you found the other half. And so it's a paradox because somehow at the same time you're one person because you're sharing the same soul and you found your other half, and now you're a whole being since you found the person you love. But also, you're obviously two people because look, you got two bodies, you're walking around, you can be miles away from each other. So it's the tricky part that Shakespeare's interested in exploring, is the idea that people in love are somehow two people. Obviously, there's more than one person there, and they can take subways in different directions and go far away from each other, but that they're somehow also one person because man and wife is one flesh, or soulmates are they're essentially sharing the same soul, or that they act as one, or that the person considers the other person to be just as valuable, maybe even more valuable than their own life. So the idea that somehow people in love are two people and also one person because they share a soul, because they're linked up, is what Shakespeare is exploring in the middle part of this poem. Once you grasp that, the whole poem becomes so much easier. Usually what I do in class is when I give this to students, I put them in groups and give them each a stanza to work on, and so each person figures it out for themselves, and then we realize all the stanzas are essentially saying the same thing. So now that you know that, it makes the rest of the poem much easier to understand. So they loved as love in twain. Twain is two. They loved as love in two people in love, the phoenix and the turtle. So they loved as love in twain had the essence but in one, right? So they're two, but somehow they're also one. Twain means two. This means one. Two distincts, meaning two distinct separate creatures, but division none. So they're two creatures, they're two distinct living creatures. There's a phoenix and a turtle. Those are two distinct creatures, but they don't have any division because they're essentially sharing love. Number there in love was slain. Essentially, think about their love killed the god of math. Because in math, you need the numbers to make sense. One is a different number than two. But number is slain, the god of numbers is killed because of the phoenix and the turtle. Because math is supposed to be about numbers that are stable. One is always one. Two is all. One equals one. Easy. Two equals two. Easy. That's math. 1 plus 1 is 2. 2 plus 0 is 2. It's supposed to make sense. But with the birds, things stop making sense. Because in math, 1 equals 1. 2 equals 2. But in the love between these birds, somehow 2 birds equals 1 creature. Because they're so unified, they're so together, they found their other half. And so it's a tricky thing. Number is basically, you've destroyed mathematics, because now numbers don't make any sense, because somehow these birds are 2 and 1 at the same time. It's essentially like saying 2 equals 1. That would make math explode. 2 cannot equal 1. 2 equals 2, 1 equals 1. But the bird's love is such that there's somehow 2 creatures who share one soul, and so they are both 2 and 1 at the same time, which is such a big deal that basically math explodes and dies. Okay, and the rest of the poem just repeats that in multiple different ways. You can see it in the next stanza here. Hearts remote, meaning their hearts are far away from each other, yet not asunder. Asunder means they're far away. So the hearts are remote from each other, but they're also not split apart because they have one heart. So somehow remote means far away, asunder means far away. So it's like saying their hearts are far away, yet not far away. Distance and no space was seen. Like, how can it be both? How can you both be far away and not far away at the same time? How can you be both distant from someone and also have no space between the two of you? So it's a repetition of the same thing. How can 2 equal 1? How can hearts be separate but also together? How can you have distance between 2 people but also no space, no distance between 2 people? So he says, hearts remote yet not asunder, distance and no space was seen twixt this turtle and his queen. So the turtle dove and the queen is the phoenix. There's no distance between the two of them. There's no distance there. But in them it were a wonder, meaning except, this is a confusing thing, but means except. Except in them it were a wonder, meaning anywhere else it would be like a wonder, like it would just make your mind explode. But with those 2 birds, it's not a wonder. It actually makes sense. They were really deeply in love. So except in them, it was a wonder. It was a completely insane thing to have 2 equal 1. But if you knew those two birds, it's actually not a wonder. It actually makes sense. All right, I'll see you in the next video.